The world appeared to be Derek Bieri's oyster. He amassed millions through Vicegrip Garage. His car repair videos were a hit with more than 3 million subscribers. They were picture perfect. A bucolic haven, his farm in Tennessee was. However, a pivotal event occurred in 2023 that altered the course of events. That wasn't a case of burnout. A lack of funds wasn't the issue. My God, it was terrible. Nearly his demise occurred in his garage at one point. He witnessed it all with his 12-year-old son. Music, unexpectedly, Derek was profoundly affected by what he went through that day. Even though he was a miracle worker, the man couldn't prevent what followed. In the sleepy North Dakota hamlet of Mine, where winter seemed perpetual and snow coated the ground for weeks at a time, he came into this world on May 16, 1984. In the midst of vast, open fields and seemingly unending sky, his family resided in a modest white farmhouse. Quite a few comforts were lacking. Every morning before sunrise, his farmer father would brave snowstorms and frozen ground to tend to the family farm's machinery. In a location where going to a store was not an option, you had to make do with what you had. You didn't just throw out broken items, you found a way to fix them. Growing up, Derek Bieri knew that time was of the essence, that resources were short, and that making do with what you had meant mastering manual labor skills. He had outgrown his toy phase by the time he was 3. Dismantling them was his task. He and his dad would spend time in the barn, where he would observe his dad fix tractor engines. The chilly air was heavy with the aroma of oil and the din of metal clinks. Like his dad did when he was little, he took apart his toy truck in 1987 and lined up the screws. He was unstoppable. It had the support of his father. He quickly learned to fix the family lawn mower by listening to its hiccups, music, and figuring out what was wrong based on his sense of smell, hearing, and touch. Throughout Derek's formative years, all signs indicated a singular trajectory. Do it yourself and save money. At the age of 5, training on repurposing old parts became a regular feature of family dinners. In the summer of 1989, his father presented him with a damaged wagon and the task of repairing it using parts from 3 broken machines. For months, he tried to solve the mystery. Even before he was 7 years old, he had figured out how to fix 6 different farm implements by repurposing bolts and pieces from people's rubbish. He had no interest in acquiring this knowledge for the sake of a pastime. People in his hometown relied on them for survival, therefore he began studying them. You could notice it as early as kindergarten. He stood out. He secretly mended his bike chain when he was 6 years old. His chubby twit grandpa loved to tell tales of mending damaged military vehicles in the heat of battle. Derek listened intently by the fire and stayed up late attempting to put what he had heard into practice using whatever discarded materials he could locate in the yard. Despite the fact that the engine was seized, he persisted after discovering a rusting 1972 farm music truck. With icy fingertips and the light of a lamp, he labored on it for 14 consecutive nights until he got it going. There was already that doggedness, that refusal to give up. He skipped asking for a toy in 1991, when he was 7 years old. He erected one. He fashioned a go-kart out of a baby stroller chassis, a lawnmower engine that was left over, and any metal he could find. Everything included it was under $10. Indeed, it produced the desired result. As if it were a shiny new machine, he plowed it through the fields. That one go-kart turned into 3, and then 4. With each passing one, they get better. He had a strong aversion to wastage. Something might be possible if it has components. He encountered an obstacle when he was 13 years old, while excavating the backyard of the family shed. Rusted, worn, and almost forgotten, the ancient, music, Ford vehicle belonged to his grandfather. None of that glitzy equipment, no instructions, just Derek. The time and a couple of borrowed wrenches. Even changing the oil was more than a mechanical process. He had to scrape the rust by hand, replace the ignition wires, and rebuild the distributor. He was embarking on the journey that would shape his life. He started taking auto shop classes at Mine High School in 2001. Passing was all the majority of the students' goals. Derek was meticulously restoring a carburetor off a 1972 Chevy Nova, taking care of each and every bolt. He meticulously cleaned each component by hand, produced schematics, and took notes. At the county fair, he took home first-place honors and a perfect score on the Nova. In fact, it was recognized with an honorable mention at the regional level. However, Derek's true reward was the satisfaction of knowing he had solved the puzzle on his own. He was 16 the following summer and wanted to continue his education, but his parents couldn't afford to buy him new parts. Consequently, he spent $200 on a used 1985 Honda Civic. He spent 3 arduous months assembling a new gearbox from scrap metal. He lifted the engine by himself, dismantled the broken system, and improvised a replacement from discarded materials. He accomplished a task that a shop would have charged $800 for in a quarter of the time. The accident followed. He accidentally fused his index finger to the metal while welding a scrap fender when he was 17 years old. He went to the hospital immediately because of the agony. However, he persisted. On the contrary, he learned safety procedures like a soldier studies a map through music. The lesson was harsh, but it improved him. Upon graduating from high school in 2002, he enrolled in an automotive technology program at a nearby college. During his late-night lab sessions, he meticulously disassembled V8 engines. Even though everyone else departed early, he remained till midnight to clean the pieces. His professors noted that he was precise but not quick. Painstaking attention was given to cataloging, cleaning, and reassembling each element. Here he started to hone the meticulous approach that would come to characterize his online automobile building. His 18-year-old self enlisted in the United States Army before any of that could blossom into a profession. He was assigned to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and trained as an IT specialist there. His duty was to maintain the operational status of satellite systems, ensuring that military units could communicate with one another even in the midst of simulated battle. 12-hour shifts, problems, stress. When failure was not an option, he learned to remain calm, work quickly, and find solutions to challenges. Musician, name, was sent to Iraq in 2004. 20 years old was his age. His Humvees broke down during a patrol near Baghdad. They were left vulnerable due to a lack of power in time. Under the truck, Derek used a flashlight to find the music wires, which led him to a fried relay, which he then bypassed using a combination of discarded materials and hand tools. The convoy was rescued from hostile territory when he revived the truck. That was something his CO will never forget. But that wasn't the end of it. He also developed his own software that year. It was a basic tool for soldiers to use while troubleshooting electrical problems in their vehicles, rather than having to wait for assistance from outside sources. It was time-saving and could run on standard Army laptops. 2. Music, fix a friend's 1990 Jeep Wrangler. He even utilized it to find hidden electrical flaws. Quickly, word got out. He had outgrown his role as a technician. He had the ability to fix everything. The theft of the laptop followed. A crucial control laptop was stolen from a cargo vehicle in 2005 by enemy saboteurs. It was necessary for the vehicle to operate. After salvaging old wires and components from a defunct generator, Derek constructed a one-of-a-kind wiring harness using materials he found in the garbage. Just 2 nights were enough for him to finish it. That vehicle was functional. He maintained his unit's momentum. A commendation was secretly granted by the Army. By 2007, at the age of 23, he had been discharged. Song, armed with his newfound knowledge and a sense of purpose, he returned to North Dakota. A rusty 1969 Chevy Camaro was his find, so he set out to restore it. He removed the engine, rewired the vehicle, and repaired the floor all by himself. We cleaned every bolt. In his parents' driveway, he worked in the freezing weather, doing each repair by hand. In 2008, just out of his military service, he entered the Nene dealership at the age of 24. Hans, who regularly works on Humvees as a mechanic. However, the topic had shifted away from war. Transmissions were the subject. In the first year alone, he devoured more than 500 of them. Several of them were GM V6s, which were notorious for consuming less advanced technologies. At 98%, he achieved success. Not because he was showy, but because he had a way of revitalizing any vehicle he touched. He would stay up late reading old manuals and trying to figure out why previous people had given up. By 2009, he has expanded his musical repertoire beyond simply mending autos. His mission was to show others the way. The shopkeepers there took his instructions to heart. Managers reported never having seen an increase of this magnitude. He didn't perceive it as swift. It was natural. He stopped turning wrenches in 2010. At the age of 26. Within a regional car chain, he oversaw a crew of 15. Also, he wasn't very good at it. No suits were seen on him. His attire was coveralls. He persisted in patrolling the factory floor, inquiring about various parts, and examining bolts and torque. Something daring was introduced that year by him. Putting used components to good use by keeping track of every screw, bracket, music, and gasket. There was no consideration of cost. Being intelligent was the key. Savings were 30%. Leaders swooped in. They insisted he bring it up at a national conference. The whole chain quickly adopted his method. This was no accident. He had a strategy. Saving money wasn't his only goal. Through his music, he was able to inspire his team, develop trust, and ensure that no one felt expendable. A new room welcomed him in 2012. Now serving as VP of Operations, he oversaw supplier contracts totaling more than $2 million for a Midwest components manufacturer. He then subtly changed positions. He began to prioritize the treatment of vendors' employees over merely their prices. Music, they could secure larger contracts if they paid decent wages and made sure their workplaces were safe. If they refused, he would simply leave. There was a 40% decline in employee turnover during that time. There will be no more fleeing exhausted employees. Word got out because this was unusual in his world. His name started to appear in trade periodicals. Peaceful individual with strong morals and a unique blend of musical styles. Next, 2014 slammed down. Now the CEO, he was 30 years old. Something didn't add up one night as he stared at financial data. He refrained from referring the matter to accountants. The music, arithmetic was something he worked on alone, night after night. He was surprised by how terrible what he discovered was. It was a devastating betrayal. $150,000 gone, his own chief financial officer gone, bogus invoices, ghost vendors. However, he discovered $120,000, filed charges, sacked the CFO, and informed his team about everything within a few weeks. Nothing hidden. Not only was the theft shocking, but his brave and quick response time assailed the local business community. The way others perceived him shifted at that time. Someone who was both a leader and a guardian. After a few years, a new aspect was revealed to the world. He began filming in his garage, to the sound of music. Nothing but him, some corroded metal, and a taped-up iPhone, no lighting, no crew. A business plan it was not. Healing took place. The pressure, infighting, and politics of the boardroom faded into thin air the moment he took up a wrench and made himself recognized. His films lacked polish. Truly, they were. Underneath the nails, smudges of grease. Giggles interspersed with expletives, and then it hit. Audiences weren't looking for flawlessness. Their desire was sincerity. Out of those sleepless evenings, Vice Grip Garage was formed. It started out growing slowly. Later on, it detonated. There was a guy behind all that, over 1.39 million subscribers, 250 million views, who merely wished to feel normal again. Without Jessica, though, it would have all fallen flat. In 2001, they crossed paths at the Mine County Fair. He had just turned 17. And so was she. Hard labor, long winters, and repurposed boots were all things that these two farm youngsters knew. They began a committed relationship. And they tied the knot in a garden ceremony on July 19, 2008. Slightly more than 50 individuals. Simple vows and unpaved roads, no glitz. His discharge was imminent. She had been his rock. She stuck through every music, crisis, employment, and relocation. That did not resemble a storybook. On a daily basis, that was an option in the music world. They continue to communicate through glances and resolve each other's grievances after more than 14 years of marriage and 24 years of being together. Another turning point in their lives occurred on March 17, 2010. Bradley and Bailey, twin boys, were delivered prematurely but in good health. And that was the turning point. Derek was leading teams, attending meetings, and correcting operations. Unfortunately, at 2 a.m, he was at home changing diapers, held aloft by a laptop and a bottle. Still, he couldn't shake the remorse that made him miss those times. It seemed like he was escaping from everything that really mattered on every flight. His true employer was never lost on him while he cared for 2 newborns at home with Jessica. They welcomed Bentley in 2012 and a girl in 2015, the identity of whom they have discreetly kept a secret. In the same year, Derek's business was on the verge of failure. The pressure, the litigation, and the embezzlement. Working 60-hour weeks was his norm. He would go days without speaking. Amidst the mayhem, Jessica regained control of the finances and the household. There were nights when they remained silent. They kept going even though they hardly cracked a smile for weeks. In neither the dream nor on one another. After that, treatment began. After Jessica confronted him in 2016 and told him something was wrong, he finally came clean. Extreme exhaustion was threatening to derail him. As they grew up, he was afraid he would miss them. Becoming an unfamiliar man was something he drew back from. They ended up making a decision as a group. He was going to leave. He would slowly and stealthily depart from the business realm. At the end of that year, ViceGrip Garage had grown beyond its hobby status. It turned into an avenue, an escape, a fresh beginning. They relocated to Lewisburg, Tennessee in 2018 after gathering all of their belongings. Getting away wasn't the point. Peace was the central theme. Warmer weather, land to breathe, and no income tax were all features of Tennessee. A homeschooling program was initiated by Jessica. All year round, Derek worked on cars. Adequate room was provided for the children. A window of opportunity presented itself to the family. At last, Derek felt stable. He had stopped pursuing championships. Living was his goal. He managed to catch it. Derek Bieri was a young soldier. He was 23 years old when he shot his debut ViceGrip Garage video in 2007. Using a cheap music camera, he filmed a 1969 Camaro getting its oil changed in his garage. Roughly 50 people saw that video. Some serious auto nuts, nevertheless, took notice of his no-frills garage, honest demeanor, and actual tools. There was genuine rust, unrehearsed hands, and no editing gimmicks. Derek presented the viewers the genuine deal, unlike other car programs which use studio lighting and staged views. Over time, his unwavering resolve helped establish a culture that prioritized honesty above superficiality. Eventually, that camera would catch one of the most revered classic automobile music changes on the internet, but it started off modest. Derek left his corporate career in 2018 at the age of 34 to devote himself entirely to ViceGrip Garage. A $100 small block stolen from an Impala and a taped-up old iPhone were used to film a recreation of a 1969 Camaro Z28 that he found at a swap fair. An exhaust was fastened with a zip tie. There was an unmistakable air of disorder about it, and the hood had been chopped off for radiator space. The video gained 848,000 views in only a few weeks, which is quite impressive. It was clear from that one video that people were looking for genuineness, and Derek possessed it in spades. His actual notoriety, though, started with a $300 rust bucket. He discovered a 1972 Plymouth Duster in a barn in 2016, and it was rotting. With duct tape on the leaks and bungees connected to the hood, he managed to hold it together just long enough to drive it 100 meters home without brakes and a gearbox that, music, fought every gear. Filmed with unwavering determination, the trek became an internet sensation, boosting his subscriber count to 100,000 by the middle of 2018. An ordinary man's garage, rather than a million-dollar shop, was responsible for transforming an automobile skeleton into a rumbling muscle machine with a 485 horsepower V8. Things were on the verge of collapsing in 2019. His YouTube channel was taken down after hackers gained access to his account and posted explicit content featuring his face. The situation may have turned out quite differently if Derek hadn't brought his experience in information technology from his time in the military. With the assault neutralized, his defenses beefed up, and he returned even more formidable. He included public lessons on digital safety, new monitoring, and two-factor logins in his statement. None of his adherents departed. They rallied behind him, offering advice and a deluge of supportive remarks. During the global epidemic of 2020, Derek focused on his strengths, the revival of long-lost machines, as the world came to a standstill. An old 1964 Ford Falcon, music, was revved up by him. Plus, whatever he set out while walking stayed. Something more than just a sentence, "Send it," ensued. The song served as his ground flag. The timing couldn't have been better, as millions remained indoors yearning for a genuine experience. The video was a huge hit. Over 500,000 people had subscribed to Vice Grip Garage by year's end. A man fixing cars wasn't the only thing people were watching. Someone was refusing to give up, and they were witnessing it. He discovered a 1965 Mustang decaying in a Minnesota junkyard in 2021, 1 year thereafter. The wheels were all locked. The ceiling has collapsed. Despite the presence of animal carcasses, Derek constructed his own trailer, drove the 500 meters to Tennessee, and got the engine running. Not exactly a showstopper, but certainly loud and quick on the road. 2 million people watched that video. He also tackled an even more insane project that year. Participating in 700-meter drag races in a 1970 Chevrolet P10 ice cream truck in the Midwest. Prior to the speedometer malfunctioning, the truck hardly reached 75 mph. We had blown the brakes. In between repairing faulty sections, he fed hot dogs to music enthusiasts from behind the scenes. There was a lot of noise, discomfort, and beauty on the journey. Over 1.5 million individuals tuned in. However, there were some ups and downs. Someone broke into Derek's garage in Tennessee in 2022 and took a $1,200 Holley carburetor that he had just restored. A part it was not. It was an essential component for a set he was filming. Someone managed to catch the robber on camera. Even though he maintained his composure, Derek felt the impact. Even his listeners did. Tips came flooding in after the video of the heist became popular. He set up alarms, cameras, and new locks. He and his audience became more closer as time went on. He accomplished something in 2023 that nobody had anticipated. He recorded a 9.73 second per 4 mile at 140 mm on his Chevelle Independence during sick week. It's impressive for any vehicle. However, Derek's vehicle was equipped with a stock-style 10-bolt rear end. On the reverse cover, he scrawled, "Pray for me." Regardless, he launched. All was well with the vehicle. His co-driver, Jessica, pitched in with everything from driving to delivering snacks. The interior of the Chevelle was largely original, with the exception of a 6-point roll bar and racing belts that were installed in the late 80s. It was a large block Procharger engine. A whopping 1.8 million people became subscribers after that single pass. A little later in the year, Derek debuted on television. Derek restored a 1970 Chevelle in just 1 week for the inaugural build of Motor Trend's new show, Roadworthy Rescues. There had been no movement in the vehicle in 26 years. Then, despite the inclement weather in Tennessee, he drove it 600 meters. The show preserved his YouTube personality while incorporating expert editing. The show's core remained unchanged, despite receiving a Daytime Emmy nomination for editing. All heart, one guy, little budget, no excuses. Derek Bieri was involved in more than simply garage work by 2024. Rust, revival, music, and unfiltered honesty were the cornerstones of his kingdom. Without scripts, music, or fancy effects, Vice Grip Garage managed to amass 756 million views and 2.2 million subscribers on YouTube. Oh, and he accomplished it just by himself. The music in his videos would often go on for 100 minutes, and he would record them late at night using only garage lights and caffeine. A business model so novel that it perplexed seasoned professionals in the music industry evolved from what began as budget restorations. He would restore a vehicle, sell it for a little more than what it cost, and then use the extra cash to fund his next project. Although this cycle did not magically turn him affluent, it did earn him the trust of others. His faith in his abilities resulted in a net worth of $5 million. Google ads weren't the only ones. Sponsors like Bare Metal Zombie, guest spots on shows like Roadworthy Rescues, and exclusive items all disappeared from the web in a matter of hours. The 2024 debut of that apparel brand, Vice Grip Lodge, wasn't an afterthought. A heartfelt ode to Sick Week it was. Based on his wild racing creations, Derek released a variety of covers for 10,000 Pray For Me. Within 2 days, they were all gone. Neither were the coverings inexpensive. They were more than just a purchase, they were a status symbol. Images poured into online platforms. They became collector prizes after fans painted and mounted them. New enterprises and even some small-scale charitable endeavors were funded from the proceeds. Rare and valuable, Derek's discovery was music, not just merchandise, but a symbol of community. Even though Derek lost the race that year during Sick Week 2024, he did win something far more audible. His turbo swap failed while he was racing his 1971 Chevelle Liberty, a formidable machine with a 540 cubic inch big block and a turbo 400 transmission. He remained composed even when the engine failed. The entire event was live streamed by him. Over 500,000 people watched as he patiently explained everything, from component specifications to potential sites of failure. It was more than a crash, it was a demonstration of excellence. He was chosen as the best spectator by the music audience. Derek didn't merely turn up, he stood out among 300 racers, including notable figures like PFI Speed and Cletus McFarland. A moment of quiet followed. Fear spread among fans in early 2025. The uploading ceased. Assumptions spread. Enigma, exhaustion, vanishing act. Myths ignited a firestorm of discussion in online forums. Still, Derek was not absent. He was engrossed in the restoration of a 1968 Plymouth Fury, which required meticulous attention to detail, in the garage. He was alone with his tools, his children, and the camera. With some music playing in the background, he uploaded a vlog in which he and his lads turned wrenches and Jessica organized bolts at his side. Everything was calmed down by just one video. What the fans really forgave was the interval. They redoubled their efforts, demonstrating unwavering support. What had truly transpired remained a mystery to them, at least initially. His wrath nearly proved fatal. He was attempting to loosen a rusty exhaust bolt beneath the vehicle on a chilly day in late 2023. A film of grease covered the floor. The jack stand started to slide. 4,000 pounds of steel gave way, securing his arm and narrowly avoiding hitting his skull. It was all witnessed by 12-year-old Bentley. Screaming, Jessica bolted out. Derek managed to free his arm in some way. No shattered limbs, but scrapes and a fresh outlook. Later that night, everyone got down and made a pact. Absolute priority is given to ensuring safety. Shortcuts and hurried music projects are over. 2 times a month is now the new upload frequency for the channel. No one ever got a shot of that. Subtly rewired the entire system. But the web continued to speculate. Fans thought burnout set in when they saw less videos. To tell the truth, Derek had only subsided. Not for speed, but for safety, he restored a barn-find Chevy and uploaded the film in 2024. All of the jack stands and wheel chocks were thoroughly examined. He refrained from saying, "I nearly died." It was unnecessary. It was a clear message. Making it home safely after fixing cars is the only way to justify the effort. In 2025, the following year, the message was further amplified. While preparing for Sick Week, Derek's donor engine, which had been purchased for $3,000 and was marked as ready to roll, was seized during installation. Nothing could move the crankshaft. There is no time to fix the rusty piston and its hidden damage. Many would have turned around and gone. It wasn't Derek. After reassembling the carburetor and custom fitting a salvage transmission, he used pieces from abandoned agricultural equipment. Even an improvised engine stand was constructed by him. It was a musical flop that ended up being a tutorial. Despite the tuning issues and race postponement, the vehicle managed to get around. Someone else might fall into the same $3,000 pitfall if he hadn't documented the entire procedure. He constructed an additional item later on that year. Not a Renaissance music, but a discovery. The 1970 Nova he used as his first purpose-built drag vehicle wasn't a rag-and-bone affair. There was a procedure. The vehicle has a special fuel cell, upgraded brakes, a roll cage, chassis testing, and reinforced rails. On her maiden voyage, the Nova traversed 150 minutium. No longer was he attempting to make an impression. His intention was to do it correctly. At every weld, fans could see it. Speed wasn't the point. Making a wise move was the key. As of the year 2025, Derek Bieri's age was 41. 3 million subscribers were reached by ViceGrip Garage. He was now worth $7 million on an individual basis. Each of the more than 10,000 vehicles he had refurbished was an example of grit rather than glamour. As a refuge from his previous business life, his farm in Tennessee had become his home and workplace. While the figures were substantial, they did not constitute the legacy. What those figures stood for was more important. Being truthful, being patient, and being part of a group that learned bolt by bolt. Derek remained a doting father despite his fame. By 2025, a video documenting his boys and him working on a Camaro had amassed 1 million views. Extras weren't Bailey, Bradley, and Bentley. They had the role of trainees. There was no Jessica in the background. Coordinating road trips, distributing tools, and filming, she was right in the middle of it all. They lived an authentic life. When a wrench came loose, you could hear the children yelling or giggling nearby. The true thrill was in that unfiltered familial beat. It lacked substance. Connection was the key. Just as suddenly, a hint of something fresh materialized. Music, Derek hinted of a book in late 2025. No, it was more than that. Healing took place. Stillness regarding the cost that the moment of almost death executed. Secrets of budget racing would be the subject of the book. The music, however, would discuss anxiety, stress, and recovery in between tuning charts and torque numbers. He still hadn't halted. He was merely changing directions. His goal for 2026 was to go to the Midwest Drags in a twin-turbo Falcon and try to get a second run under 9 seconds. However, he would not be the recipient of the prize money from that race. It all started in Minot, North Dakota, where the money would go toward scholarships for young mechanics.